Slough Horses on Apple TV is based on the book series Slough House by British novelist Mick Herron. Each season consisting of 6 episodes adapts one of Herron's books. The series in many ways provides readers with a semi-canonical cast and setting for the book series. It's a bit similar to early Game of Thrones being seen as the proper adaptation of A Song of Ice and Fire. In fact, legendary GOT casting director Nina Gold served as the casting director for Slough Horses. And while the show may not have the same kind of fantasy appeal as something like Game of Thrones, this is a complex series with unique dynamics between characters. And in the books the series is based on, we're in the heads of these characters and learn a decent bit more about them than what's on display in the show. So what is Slough House, and how does it compare to its TV counterpart? This video will contain spoilers for book and seasons 1 through 4 of Slough Horses. Book and season 1 open on MI5 agent River Cartwright. He's in the middle of a training exercise at Stansted Airport, which goes south thanks to the efforts of James Spider Webb, who gives River bad information about a bomber in the airport.
Asian males, 20s, backpack, blue shirt, white tee.
I said white shirt, blue tee.
No. You said blue shirt, white tee.
River is then forced to pursue the real bomber to a tube near the airport, where he ultimately fails to stop the bombing. In the book, the exercise doesn't start at Stansted Airport and lead to a tube nearby. The entire sequence takes place at King's Cross Station, and River is just on the wrong platform. River gets a security guard to show him the CCTV, which reveals the white shirt, blue tee bomber. Despite River's best efforts, he fails to make it in time. Whereas Show River just fucking annihilates the guy.
Stop! What are you doing?
The TV show has a tendency to emphasize the action element of the story, whereas the books rely far more on dialogue and internal monologue. This failed training exercise results in the humiliation of MI5 in the books, given that King's Cross was crashed during rush hour and all for a failed op. But rather than dealing with a public firing and all the bad PR that goes with it, River is instead sentenced to work at the lowest rung of hell beneath MI5. This is Slough House, located on Aldersgate Street in the borough of Finsbury. The place is a dingy and damp hovel of an office. Emphasis is always placed on the yellow and gray color of the building. The walls are yellow, the filing cabinets and desks, gray. But everything is washed out and dull in color. It's like the DMV. The walls themselves have dented drywall kicked in from some previous slow horse who's already been melted down for glue. A lyric from Strange Game, Mick Jagger's theme to the series, says, "The damp's dripping down on the walls." This place is disgusting and aggressively boring. Work consists of the unenviable work of MI5. Sorting through library books on watch lists, examining tax info on potential safe houses, and other tedious work with barely any tangible results. The unset goal being to make the failed agent do the tedious work of MI5 until they quit. It's a bit like a British Spies version of The Breakfast Club. All of the ensemble cast have done something that's gotten them in detention, and they're all so different from each other. But each of them is stuck in the same boat, so they can't help but develop some sense of connection as characters. In the foreword to the first novel, Mick Herron elaborates on his inspiration for the story. The actual building on Aldersgate Street was one that he walked by on his way to work.
It's a building I used to walk past every day on my way to work. It was just near the tube station where I lived. This is fantastic. I heard this from my sister-in-law just a few days ago. Slough House is now on Google Maps. Believe it or not. It's listed as a government office.
Yeah.
And it's there. I don't know how that came about, but it's absolutely delightful.
Though it claims to be in the borough of Finsbury, the borough of Finsbury actually hasn't existed since 1963 when it was absorbed into London. This sense of being forgotten and out of date suits the character of Slough House perfectly, which is why Herron highlights this detail despite its inaccurate nature. But the key inspiration was the door to what in his mind became Slough House. And on the next block along was a nondescript row of shops, a pair of which sandwiched a black door, made filthy by the splashes from passing traffic. I'd never seen this door open or close. He imagined what might go on behind that door, and his imagination created Slough House, where the bad spies are sent. In reality, one day Herron actually witnessed someone walk out of the door to his shock, but it was the promise that this door never opened or closed which inspired him. I'd promised myself I'd never tell anyone about this. Ever. Knowing even as I did so that it was the making of the promise, not the opening of the door, that would render it a good story to share with readers. This building is so forgotten and worthless that the door is seemingly welded shut by weathering. That's why in each book, Herron mentions the door and makes the promise that it never opens or closes. Particularly admiring its door, which I've always been careful to note, never opens, never closes. If you want to get into Slough House, you have to go around the back. In the books, it's mentioned that the door to Slough House is sandwiched between a Chinese restaurant and a dying newsagent's. Slough House itself has the text W.W. Henderson, Solicitor and Commissioner for Oaths, in one of its upstairs windows, a long-forgotten cover story or simply the relic of a previous tenant. Each of the books in the series is structured identically. There's a cold open, typically depicting a terrorist attack or a mysterious event which creates intrigue. The opening of the book describes Slough House, then bounces between its characters. Each book is split into 2 parts, each part with their own subtitle. And the book ends the same way it began, describing Slough House.
I mean, I'm a writer because I love playing with language, essentially, and I really enjoy finding, different kinds of, different jingles, different moods, different kinds of word music to play in those opening and closing passages. I don't really know where it comes from, and I try not to analyze it. I fear that I would break something if I sat down and thought about it rather than sat down and did it,
Mick Herron's descriptions of the building in the openings and endings of each book gives Slough House a vivid, lived-in feeling. Dead Lions opens using a hypothetical cat exploring the rooms of Slough House, characterizing the offices of its occupants as it progresses. When it eventually makes its way up to Jackson Lamb's office, he picks the hypothetical cat up by its throat and tosses it out the window. He'd have seized our cat by the throat, pulled up the blind, opened the window, and dropped it to the road below. It's a lucky escape for our cat, then, that it doesn't exist, for that would have been a brutal ending. The joke at the end of the book is that a hypothetical mouse makes its way through Slough House to Lamb, who in turn remarks that what this place needs is a cat. Book 4 describes heat rising through Slough House via its pipes and radiators. When the book ends, an oppressive chill takes over. Book 5, London Rules, soon to be adapted into Season 5 of the series, uses the POV of Dawn as it progresses through Slough House. In some parts of the world, dawn arrives with rosy fingers to smooth away the creases left by night. But on Aldersgate Street, in the London borough of Finsbury, it comes wearing safecrackers' gloves so as not to leave prints on the windowsills and doorknobs. When the book ends, dusk enters Slough House and tells its shadowy tale. When dusk at last comes, it comes from the corners where it's been waiting all day, and seeps through Slough House the way ink seeps through water, first casting tendrils, then becoming smoky black cloud, and at last, being everywhere, the way it always wants to be. Herron's vivid and poetic descriptions turn Slough House itself into a character in the story. He also has a habit of hiding information from the reader. It's not till a decent bit after River is reintroduced that we learn that the opening was a training exercise. So the reader is left confused as to how River could possibly have walked away from the bombing in one piece. Book 3 opens on an insane note, vaguely describing the scene of Batman murdering Spider-Man by throwing him off the roof of a building. The reader is left in the dark about this until later when it's connected to Sean Donovan. So there's this intriguing way that Mick Herron writes these books. It's difficult to trust him as an author since he's always concealing details and keeping the reader in suspense. Sometimes he does this after an insane event has just been stated plainly to have occurred. Agents at Slough House are referred to as slow horses, which is what the title of the show and first book refer to. They called them the slow horses. The screw-ups, the losers, they called them the slow horses, and they belonged to Jackson Lamb. In the books, Jackson Lamb really is just awful. He's an overweight, flatulent loaf who takes blissful glee in mocking his co-workers, proving in every scene that he is utterly without a filter. Despite his indolent look, Lamb is always surprising people with spontaneous movement. He'll perform some swift action, such as moving his feet off his desk, and it will be described as uncharacteristic of him. Jackson Lamb can move surprisingly swiftly for a man of his bulk, or he can when he feels like it. Lamb also has a tendency for catching people off guard with how quietly he can move about. Episode 1 of the show references this by showing Lamb surprising River and Sid when they return to Slough House late in the night.
Fucking hell.
If people are happy to spend time in this building after 5 p.m., then I'm not really doing my job.
In Book 4, having been absent from Slough House for months, Lamb surprises everyone by sneaking into the building and casually joining a conversation the characters are having. So there's this Captain Jack Sparrow energy to Lamb in the books. On the surface, he seems to be a bumbling idiot who can't control his drinking impulses.
I have a drinking problem?
But underneath it all, he's incredibly perceptive and strategic. Lamb always gets people to underestimate him and knows how to keep dirt on people. Lamb also is constantly described as pulling cigarettes seemingly out of the ether. It's like this constant magic trick that he's pulling to catch people off guard. But while these spontaneous aspects of his character prove that he's skillful when he wants to be, Lamb himself is utterly self-indulgent. He is constantly smoking and drinking in his office and is farting all the time. The show sees infrequent references to this, but in the books, Mick Herron does not hold back from the fart jokes in the slightest.
Oh, better out than in. God, you're vile.
In Lamb's office, there's a corkboard with money off coupons which seem old and out of date. Lamb continues to add to it for some reason. In the middle of Book 1, it's revealed that Lamb keeps his Flyte fund of money and passport in the corkboard. This is meant to mirror Lamb as a character. Old, outdated, and useless on the surface, but hiding a plan underneath it all.
How much? 1,500, a passport, and a key to a box.
Switzerland.
Fuck you, Switzerland. Bank in a 2-donkey French town, 4 hours drive from Paris. Why am I telling you all this?
Probably so you'd have an excuse to kill me.
That's probably it.
In the books, Lamb also keeps a Heckler & Koch pistol in a shoebox in his desk. It's one of the few guns that the characters have at their disposal in the books. The TV series has way more guns. There are several occasions where characters have guns in the show when they don't in the books. For instance, Marcus only has a small revolver that he brings to the third act of Book 3.
You said there was a pistol in here somewhere?
There's always one wedged in the seat. Well, I guess that's a gun.
But in the show, he's got an entire John Wick-style arsenal in his trunk.
You drive your kids around with an illegal armory in the back?
Got this for an emergency, you know? Sort of a, 100 to 1 type situation.
In the book, Marcus says this is a family car, not a roving arsenal. But again, the show goes more for action, whereas the books are more slow burns. Everyone in Slough House knows the password to Lamb's computer is password. But perhaps one reason for this is that Lamb barely uses computers. Lamb is far more on the analog side of the equation in the books. Gary Oldman's performance highlights the more empathetic aspects of Lamb's character. He's far more active in the plots of these stories and shows more open care for the people in Slough House.
I mean, to be quite frank about it, if you're paying an actor a lot of money to be in a show, you want to use them as much as possible. So Jackson Ann will appear in more scenes on the TV, doing more stuff than he does on the page. Right. In the books, generally, he's just back in his office, drinking himself stupid. On the screen, you'll see more of him doing more stuff. He can drive cars and things, and walk up and down, and that kind of thing.
You need to hear this from me, not an insensitive prick like him.
Well, she's gone.
Yeah. From my end of the telescope, surviving's the short straw. By the time I was your age, I'd lost a baker's dozen. It was bad enough when the war was up, but once they reduced it to bricks and rubble, everything went to shit. Whole networks of Joes rounded up, blown. I haven't forgotten any of them.
But in the books, this is something which is far more under the surface. Lamb is always getting in the heads of the characters around him, and he manipulates them with cunning and deception. In Book 1, at Blake's grave, Lamb implies that he'll give some motivating speech to the group, only to subvert this.
I don't normally do these kind of speeches, but this feels like a big moment, and if it all turns to shit, I might not see any of you again. You're fucking useless. The lot of you. Working with you has been the lowest point in a disappointing career. Right. Cartwright, you're with me.
This ends up motivating the characters regardless, but it's hard to tell if this was by design or just a side effect of him being a cock. In Book 3, Lamb fires Marcus and Shirley on the spot. In the book, Marcus sneaks out of Slough House to gamble and goes to the park's gun range to pop off a few rounds. On top of this, Shirley is noticeably high from bumping a line of coke, hence him firing them on the spot. The duo wonder if Lamb is being sincere or if he's trying to motivate them by offering spite as a reward. This sense of deviousness is also part of a game that Lamb plays with Catherine, the recovering alcoholic of Slough House. He pours himself and Catherine drinks, but she never accepts them. Catherine wonders if Lamb is attempting to tempt her off the wagon, or if he wants her to stay on it just to spite him. But that's how Lamb works. He never really says what he means. But you can tell that under the loathsome figure that he outwardly presents, there's care, as well as deadly cunning. My name is Catherine, and I am an alcoholic. Such is the mantra of Catherine Standish, the aforementioned alcoholic of Slough House. Despite this being her mantra that she picked up from recovery, Catherine doesn't go to AA meetings in the books. She isn't really an alcoholic anymore. She hadn't had a drink in 10 years, but still. But the temptation to drink is what defines many of Catherine's choices in the books. More importantly, it's ultimately why she ended up in Slough House. The show came up with Catherine's AA meetings, wisely creating a natural way for Catherine's mantra to be stated in a sentence.
My name's Catherine. I'm an alcoholic. I'll just listen tonight.
In the books, Catherine thinks of her mantra, but never really says it out loud. On top of this, in the show, Catherine meets Sean Donovan at an AA meeting, whereas in the books, there's history between the two. Catherine is at a rough stage of her life. She's 49 and dealing with that melancholy of reaching 50. In the books, Catherine and Diana Taverner are the same age, and both of them are somewhat insecure about this. Catherine's hair is said to be blonde, but only if you get close, and nobody ever got close enough to see. Therefore, everyone only sees gray, and a woman that had something of the spectral about her. Charles' partner was the first desk at MI5 during the height of the Cold War. This was also when David Cartwright was a second desk at MI5 and essentially operated as first desk in all but name. Partner never married and occupied the classic married to his work attitude. However, Partner was bad about taking care of himself. He couldn't organize his schedule or keep food in his house. So Catherine, his assistant at the time, worked as somewhat of a caretaker for him. It was a bit like Jimmy and Chuck's relationship in Better Call Saul. Catherine would help Partner with his groceries and make sure that he was staying healthy, but the two of them never had a romantic affair. In her mind, Catherine thinks the reality had been this. She had worked for Charles' partner, cared for him.
Rather than sacking me, my boss paid for me to get help.
A knight in shining armor.
If you like.
Your prince.
No. But then I started to live my life. So I paid him back in kind. I bought food for him. I arranged his flowers. I arranged his life.
Catherine lived for the bottle in every aspect of her life. She thinks that going out with coworkers, going home, or going on a date in some way left a drink as an option. And Catherine spent many nights getting drunk to the point of blacking out, lost in one-night stands and meaningless connections. In the books, Catherine worked with and was romantically involved with Sean Donovan. In the show, there's a build-up to Catherine being kidnapped, but in the books, Sean is right there at Slough House as she's leaving for the day, and her kidnapping happens shortly thereafter. Catherine didn't love Sean, but they struggled with alcohol in a nearly identical way, and ended up having a destructive relationship. Catherine's life with alcohol comes to an abrupt end when Charles learns of her alcoholism. Rather than firing her, Partner offers Catherine treatment and the chance to start again sober. Recovery is where Catherine picks up her mantra in the books. It's said that sometimes Partner called Catherine Moneypenny, in reference to the Bond character, but he never called her Moneypenny again after he found out about her alcoholism. One day, Catherine arrives to find Partner in his bathtub, dead, seemingly from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This event has scarred Catherine. She's now paranoid about turning on lights in dark rooms. Because of this, she has lights which work on a timer in her flat. Lamb attempts to be sneaky when approaching her at her flat in Book 1. As was established, Lamb can be sneaky when he wishes. But in spite of his efforts, Catherine is already awake and ready with a weapon. Catherine is wound tight and apprehensive of danger to herself. After Partner's death, Catherine is put under investigation by the Dogs, MI5's internal police force. Bad Sam Chapman, a character who plays a major role in book and season 4 of the series, was head of the investigation and cracked down hard on Catherine. Thanks to Lamb's efforts, Catherine avoided a treason charge in spite of the fact that Partner was attempting to frame her. The truth is, Partner was a traitor who was selling secrets to the Russians. Furthermore, Lamb was the one who killed Partner on David Cartwright's order to avoid a public trial. So there's this unique connection between Lamb and Catherine. Neither of them particularly like each other, but it seems that Lamb feels some sense of guilt for what he's done. Perhaps protecting Catherine is the path he sees as the chance at redeeming himself. Lamb and Catherine's dialogue scenes really stand out as highlights of the novels. They're reminiscent of Varys and Littlefinger's dialogue in Game of Thrones, or Tywin and Arya. Combative dialogue where the characters are always pushing each other's boundaries and unleashing words as though they're playing chess. While these scenes are translated relatively well to the show, they have a bit more bite to them in the books. Book 3 really puts Catherine through the ringer. She grapples with her temptation to drink throughout the entire novel, since a meal brought to her by her kidnappers comes with a small bottle of wine. Catherine holds the bottle, and voices in her head tempt her to open it, but she ultimately ends up pouring it down the sink in spite of the temptation. While the confrontation with Catherine and Lamb largely goes down as it does in Book 3, one element is missing. Lamb notices the empty bottle of wine and prods Catherine if she succumbed to the temptation. Whilst this seems to come from some form of protective instinct for Catherine, Lamb is just too forceful and judgmental. As she grows more confrontational, Lamb begins degrading Charles' Partner and tells her that Partner was framing her. Catherine's alcoholism made her the perfect scapegoat when MI5's internal police came poking around.
You're lying.
Does it sound like a lie? Or maybe something you've known all along and never had the courage to admit to yourself?
The book describes Catherine's words as coming scarcely louder than silence. I said, fuck you. Fuck you, Jackson Lamb. I quit. To which Lamb coldly replies, of course you do. But she turned and walked away without replying. Catherine quitting serves as somewhat of an omen for this series moving forward. There is no ghost of a chance to get back in that game. This story only ends one of two ways: when Lamb fires you for shits and giggles, or when you've had enough of his bullshit and utter those two short little words. But Catherine herself is irreplaceable. Mick Herron describes her as the heart of Slough House. In Book 4, she's replaced by Moira Tregorian, but this is short-lived. Moira was transferred to Slough House due to her indirect knowledge that Whelan is an adulterer, something Moira doesn't catch on to in the books, because she's an idiot. Lamb addresses this through the guise of inviting her to lunch, something that the slow horses realize must be a front for Lamb's real motives. Catherine is reincorporated into the story through River, who entrusts Catherine with David Cartwright's care. In spite of her quitting, Lamb won't let Catherine go, and deliberately neglects to file her paperwork. She receives service checks in the mail, but intentionally doesn't cash them. Ultimately, Catherine returns to Slough House in the following book. While Jackson Lamb may be a man without a heart, Catherine makes up for it for the sake of the slow horses. Catherine and Lamb are bad for each other and are constantly sparring in conversations throughout the books. But there's this connection between them like old lovers who don't belong together. But they make up for each other's shortcomings, and they both know each other so well. With Catherine back in Slough House, what's next for her character growth? And will she manage to stay on the wagon despite the trauma of Patrice's brutal attack, and the impact it will no doubt have on the slow horses? The ending of Season 4 of the show sees Diana Taverner visiting Slough House personally, something which is yet to occur by the end of Book 4. In Book 4, the meat of this conversation with Lamb happens with Whelan rather than Taverner. It's him who hears Lamb's insistence about Marcus being paid more post-mortem, for which Lamb uses his knowledge of Claude's Galahad identity for blackmail purposes. He then follows up this conversation with Catherine. As he frequently does throughout the books, Lamb pours Catherine a drink, which she accepts. She then sniffs its contents for a moment before setting the glass back on the desk. Catherine raised the glass to her lips and breathed in. She smiled a little, though to herself rather than at Lamb. Then she put it back on the desk. So for now, Catherine is still at Slough House, doing an outstanding job sorting through paperwork that nobody will read, and helping to soften some of Lamb's blows to the other slow horses. As for Lamb's games with the drinks, Catherine is yet to give in. While Lamb and Catherine occupy the offices upstairs, the viewpoint character who feels the closest to the main character role is River Cartwright, and his story is the key focus of book and season 1. After the blue shirt, white tee fiasco, 8 months pass for which River is stuck at Slough House. With how big his screw-up was, he probably should have been fired. But Lamb insinuates that it was because of River's grandfather, David Cartwright, that he was transferred to Slough House. David hints at this in a conversation the two have later in the book. River is bored out of his mind, and Lamb hasn't given him any real work. That is, until the beginning of the story following the time jump. Lamb orders River to go to a disgraced journalist named Robert Hobden to steal his rubbish. This is the closest thing to an op that River has been on in 8 months, and it's the perfect illustration of what work at Slough House is like. When people think about spying on someone, they typically think about overhearing clandestine conversations or tailing someone throughout a city. But part of surveilling someone involves sifting through their rubbish looking for clues. It's the spy work that nobody wants to do, but this work is the bread and butter of the slow horses. In the show, River finds clues indicating that Hobden made thermite recently. So the work pays off a bit more in the show than it does in the book. Whilst River deals with sorting through rubbish, Sid Baker is sent by Lamb to get files from Hobden's computer. But Hobden is crafty and paranoid. He has a fake USB stick that Sid takes, which just repeats pi over and over.
It's pi. Is it a code?
No, it's pi, running to an infinite number of places.
Is there anything else behind it? Any other files on the stick? Anything?
No.
And in the show, Roddy attempts to hack into his computer and tells River that Hobden doesn't back his computer up online.
He's air-gapped.
Right, what's air-gapped?
He's not online.
Right, so he has to be online for you to hack his emails.
No, he doesn't use emails. He's got no online presence at all. He's old school. Just keeping it analog.
Regardless, between River and Sid got the job with significantly more tradecraft involved. Sid and River share an office, but neither one of them talk to each other too much. This changes when the two of them are sent on ops. Lamb asks River to deliver a flash box with files from Hobden's computer to Regent's Park, MI5's base of operations. So River has to trudge through the escort to his old partner in crime, Spider Webb. In the show, we see River open the flash box and copy the files. This is done off-screen, as it were, in the books. But the line about flash boxes from the book is still in the show.
What's this? No flashbox? No. Heard of those, but I mean, at Slough House, Frank Mace, we've still got jiffy bags.
Webb and River have history between each other. They trained together and were partners. River thinks that there was something between them that was more than friendship. But all of that is in the past now, ever since Webb set River up. In the book, the details of the target were given to River by Webb verbally before the mission. Later on, River confronts Webb about the tape which should have recorded the exercise being corrupted. Strangely, in the show, Webb is on the floor and states the conflicting details verbally, something that others may have picked up on.
You're looking for an Asian male, 20s, backpack, blue shirt, white tee.
Asian male, 20s, backpack, blue shirt, white tee.
I said white shirt, blue tee.
In the show, Webb also rubs the incident in by addressing that the failed exercise is used in training modules, something that the books briefly mention.
What about the people who lost their lives and limbs?
It wasn't real.
What is this then? Other than a new training module entitled How to Avoid a Fucking Fiasco.
It did fuck off. It wasn't a...
He's dead. She's dead.
After a very rough day, River visits his grandfather, David Cartwright. In the books, he is sometimes referred to as the OB, meaning Old Bastard, by River. This was a name that River's mother, Isabel, called David, and River has since adopted it in a loving way. Something that the show benefited from with hindsight was the deterioration of David's mind. In the books, David's dementia kind of comes out of nowhere in book 4. But in the show, the first interaction between River and the OB actually sets this up.
You know you left the front door open.
I saw you driving up.
Are you sure you didn't leave it open by mistake?
River and David have an incredibly loving relationship. David filled a father figure role to River, and he's the key reason why River joined the service. In his prime, David was a legendary MI5 second desk, and River grew up listening to stories his grandfather told him about his life of tradecraft. River brings up Robert Hobden to David, who explains that he was a journalist who was a communist years back who slowly moved to the far right, but association with the British Patriotic Party discredited his name across the board. In the book, David says Robert Hobden wasn't excommunicated because of his beliefs. It was because there are certain beliefs you're supposed to keep under wraps if you want to dine at high table. The next day at work, River and the rest of the Slough House crew learn that someone has been kidnapped, and the video of them being held hostage is shown on the web. This is Hassan Ahmed, a Pakistani-British citizen kidnapped by a group of Islamophobic terrorists. The kidnappers initially put a hood on Hassan's head and force him to wear gloves. Consequentially, most watching assume it's ISIS, but then the kidnappers take off the hood and reveal his ethnicity. They wanted people to assume it was ISIS, only to turn it back on them, as it were. The only thing the kidnappers make clear is that they want to cut his head off, and that they will carry out their threat in 48 hours. Lamb insists that everyone stay out of it, but River can't help himself and decides to pursue Hobden. Jed Moody was one of the dogs. The reason why he is in Slough House is that he'd let a desk jockey clean his clock before making tracks with about £1 Moody is bitter and absolutely hates the boredom at Slough House. He habitually shows up late and leaves early, and he harasses people at the bus stop by giving off a creepy aura. But the phrase repeated throughout Jed's sections is, "Nobody cared." Nobody cares what Jed Moody does, frustrating him to no end. That is, until he is confronted by Diana Taverner, one of the second desks at Regent's Park. Jed and Taverner meet at a bench near the canal, the same place that Diana meets Lamb in the show and one of the more memorable locations from the books. The place is a blind spot for CCTV, and also has a film of fake bird shit on it to deter people from sitting on the bench. In the show, the bench is seemingly destroyed, so we'll see if it ends up being used in the story again. Taverner discovers that Moody put a bug in Lamb's office. She asks him to do her a favor or two off the record and gives him a phone. It's Moody who confronts Hobden at his house for his computer. River and Sid are outside Hobden's house before Moody arrives. The two of them share some charming dialogue. In the book, Sid explains her experience with the 7/7 bombings, something that inspired many MI5 service recruits at the time the first book was published. Right before the two confront Moody, however, Sid tells River that she was assigned to Slough House to keep an eye on him. River is confused, since Sid is a competent agent and he doesn't understand why he'd be worth the bother. But before the two can discuss the matter, they notice a disguised Jed entering Hobden's house. After a struggle with Hobden, Jed's gun goes off and ends up striking Sid in the head. River is shaken by the event. He never knew Sid too well, but a spark was developing between the two, and now Sid is gravely injured. River calls an ambulance and parks his car in an ambulance parking space at the hospital. He tells himself that head wounds bleed badly. It doesn't necessarily mean Sid is dead, right?
Head wounds bleed. It all worked out in the end.
But River is then locked in a closet by an MI5 agent called in and requires rescuing by Lamb. Book River by this point is not coping well. His shirt is covered in Sid's blood, and he's having trouble just stringing a sentence together. Regardless, he and Lamb head back to Slough House to regroup. The two discover Min and Louisa drunk and horny from the pub. They arrived whilst Moody was upstairs trying to get rid of the bug he planted and attempting to steal Lamb's flight fund. Lamb then meets with Taverner at the canal, who gives him an explanation as to what's happening. Taverner has set up the kidnapping with an agent on the inside. The Voice of Albion is a hate group funded by Greg Simmons, who has little direct involvement. The idea was that MI5 would intercept the kidnappers before they carried out their threat, discrediting far-right groups by pegging them down as the kidnappers, and propping up MI5 in the process as the ones who kick down doors and get the job done. On top of this, Hassan's uncle is Mahmoud Gul, who works as an equivalent of second desk in Pakistani military intelligence. Rescuing his nephew could help the park make a friend, as Diana puts it. Hobden overheard Diana discussing the op with her brother, which is why Taverner attempts to survey him and uses the slow horses to do it. One of the more iconic lines from the book is uttered verbatim in the show.
God, you really care about them, don't you?
No, I think they're a bunch of fucking losers. but they're my losers.
Lamb so often acts as though he doesn't care, but just how active he is in the first book compared to some of the other books proves him wrong in many ways. Taverner offers Lamb the opportunity to rescue Hassan himself, to which the group humbly oblige, only for it to all go tits up. Diana did not count on two things. She didn't count on one of the kidnappers being an utter Nazi-sympathetic psychopath who is bent on killing someone from the Middle East, whom Curly is, and she didn't count on what Hobden might do after sending Jed to his house. Hobden makes his way to the home of Peter Judd. Judd is a conservative member of parliament with ambitions of becoming prime minister. His success, in part, is owed to him coming from a wealthy family. The other part of it comes from a public willing to back someone more blunt than the average politician. But Judd himself is an utter psychopath. Ingrid Tierney thinks that he'd taken an airbrush to his past, because nobody with his psychological makeup had led a damage-free life. Hobden demands to speak to Judd, and the two share less than friendly dialogue. Hobden wants Judd to contact the far-right groups that he's connected to for the sake of warning the kidnappers. Hobden is on to Diana's real motives of discrediting the far-right and is desperate to prevent her plan from working. As soft blackmail, Hobden alludes to knowledge of a photograph taken of Judd showing him throwing a Nazi salute with his arm around Nicholas Frost, who was a leading light in the National Front before being stabbed to death at a rally later on. Judd doubts that Hobden actually has a copy of the photo and claims that it was destroyed to the point that it could be said never to have existed. But even just Hobden's knowledge of the details of the photo makes him dangerous. When the reader is in Judd's mind, we learn that he was directly involved in the death of Frost. Tierney is spot on that Judd has taken an airbrush to his past. So, Judd ultimately agrees to make the calls that Hobden wants him to make. One of these calls makes its way to Greg Simmons, who warns Curly by phone of the situation. Curly already suspected that Mo was up to something, and he is itching to get a taste of what cutting a man's head off feels like. In the book, the reader is in Hassan's head. Just like in the TV show, Hassan wants to be a comedian, but he's timid of telling his jokes to an audience. To cope with the situation, Hassan names his kidnappers Larry, Curly, and Mo, a joke that his dad used at the store his family owned. He'd call two customers Laurel and Hardy. If there were three, he'd use the name of the Three Stooges. Right bunch of comedians you've got yourself mixed up with. Larry is a pretty laid-back, passive character. Curly is the brooding, quiet kidnapper, and Mo is the brains of the three bad actors. In the show, there are 4 kidnappers instead of 3, and there's more dialogue between them. This was likely done to characterize them and Hassan a bit more directly than the book. But right before the slow horses arrive, Curly gets a call from Simmons and lashes out at Mo, striking him in the back with the axe. And later, Curly chops Mo's head off. Curly leaves the head on the kitchen table on his way out. So, as the professionals like to say, shit is fucked when the Slough House crew arrive at the kidnapper's safe house. Lamb quickly destroys everyone's phones. He then demands the group split up and get everyone else who works at Slough House before they're picked up by the park. Now that they've arrived at the safe house, Taverner will no doubt attempt to put them in a frame. With Jed Moody and Sid out of the game, there are 3 characters who need to be picked up. One of the more unique individuals in Slough House is Roddy the Rodster Ho. Roddy is a recruited hacker who was banished to Slough House due to just how insufferable he is. Because Roddy doesn't like the people at Slough House. Ho didn't like any of them. Roddy is arrogant by a ridiculous margin. He's constantly thinking about how everyone admires him and needs him to get the most basic of tasks complete. In the show, River goes to Roddy to figure out what's on Hobden's USB stick. But the act of asking Roddy Ho for a favor is something River and the other slow horses find beneath them in the books. River just plugs the USB into his own computer despite the risk of it being flagged and figures out the pie thing on his own. People rarely ever go to Roddy for help in the books, and it's always a grueling exercise for them whenever they do. The one character who does end up going to Roddy for help is none other than Catherine Standish. Her motherly, comforting character ends up melting through Roddy. There's this charming aura of loving manipulation between Catherine and Roddy in the books whenever she goes to him for help. On top of this, in the books, people don't call Roddy Roddy. If they need to call him anything, they call him Ho. Catherine is the one person who starts calling him Roddy when she goes to him, and Roddy seems to like that she uses his first name. Roddy, on the other hand, has his own idea of the nickname that he imagined other people would have come up with for him by now. Clint. Why's that? Roderick Ho equals Westward Ho equals Eastward Ho equals Clint. But nobody ever called him Clint. Perhaps political correctness wouldn't allow them to make the Oriental elision from westward to eastward. There's a strong implication in the books that Roddy may be on the spectrum. There are certain social cues that Roddy just won't catch on to in a basic conversation. Several characters end up using this lack of catching on to make fun of Roddy during verbal scuffles. In spite of his arrogance and hilariously self-centered internal monologue, Roddy isn't without heart. He shows drive and even heroism from time to time. In Book 3, Roddy drives a bus through the front door of a house in an effort to save Catherine and Lamb. This doesn't actually end up saving anyone since the attackers had already been killed in the show, and in the book there was only one other person in the house. But Roddy still did put in the effort. Also, Roddy's story is slightly different in Dead Lions. In the book, it's actually Roddy who ends up rushing to the building where Pashkin is rather than Catherine. He gets exhausted from all the running and ends up having to take a cab. Roddy then does a grueling climb up the stairs, having rendezvoused with Shirley. All the while, however, Roddy's headspace is that of indifference. It's actually Shirley who runs into Marcus on the stairs, cluing Marcus into the fact that Pashkin went back to the roof. But that's kind of how Roddy works. He doesn't like the people at Slough House, he knows how to work a computer, and he'll do his job. But he finishes the race behind the slow horses who put in more effort than him. Roddy is picked up by River in the show, but it's Min and Louisa who pick him up in the book. The park goes to the address of some random person. Roddy switched his address connected to the park so that it would give them someone else should he ever be investigated. The book says if you asked him why he did that, Roddy wouldn't understand the question. River, on the other hand, is sent to pick up Kay White. Kay is a character who didn't end up making it into the TV show. In the book, Kay doesn't actually have any dialogue. The only time she almost says something, she doesn't end up going through with it. The only thing we really learn about her is that she's noisy. She used to share an office with Catherine, but Lamb banished her downstairs because of the noise. Consequentially, it seems that Kay's loudmouth traits translated to the character of Struan Loy in his adaptation in the TV series. Loy doesn't play that big of a role in the book or show. He's picked up by the dogs and interrogated by Taverner. Loy is in Slough House because he made inappropriate comments about Ingrid Tierney, the first desk at Regent's Park. So in the show, Loy's a jokester the way he is in the book, but he's also a bit of an insufferable loudmouth. Regardless, Loy and White are both picked up by the park, and the two of them fold under the pressure and agree to back Taverner's story, which he plans to use to frame Slough House. As was mentioned earlier, Lamb is the one who personally goes to pick up Catherine. Despite Lamb's attempts at stealth, she's already awake and has armed herself. Eventually, Catherine agrees to go with Lamb after being a bit more combative in the book. But on their way out, the two are confronted by Spider Webb and Nick Duffy. Duffy is currently the leader of MI5's internal police force. The two surrender themselves before it's revealed that Lamb hid his Heckler & Koch in Catherine's purse. Catherine holds Webb at gunpoint and kicks him and Duffy out of the car. So Catherine gets a taste of the thrill of being somewhat of a real spy again. She's kind of exhilarated pointing a gun and gaining an advantage against the park. Webb and Duffy asked Lamb if he had a gun, but they both failed to search Catherine. Two men underestimate a woman and end up losing because of their own carelessness. Mick Herron often writes of men looking down on women and not considering plans that they may be deriving. Taverner is constantly aware that she's a woman playing a man's game in a predominantly masculine world, and she uses her status as a woman to her advantage to exploit people like Peter Judd. With Loy and White lost, everyone else gathers at Blake's grave. This is a cemetery nearby Aldersgate Street, which is used as a hub when the characters need to meet together. There's this funny moment in the book where everyone stands at the ready when Lamb and Catherine arrive, but Roddy doesn't pay attention and is just casually using his laptop in the middle of a cemetery at like 3 a.m. With few options they can think of to get themselves off the hook, the characters realize it's only a matter of time before the park catches up and that Hassan will probably end up dead. So even though this is the first book, there's a strange sense of finality to this moment. It's almost like we've spent several books with these characters, and now they're facing down the end. But rather than giving a motivating speech, Lamb berates everyone and just fucks off.
You're fucking useless. The lot of you.
Lamb insists to River that he meant every word and that it wasn't a ploy to motivate them. Regardless of his meaning, the others are motivated and go to the local 24-hour Smithfield Café to piece things together. Something that unfortunately didn't translate as well to the show are all of the putting the puzzle together scenes in the books. Something that happens quite frequently in the books is the characters will be at Slough House and just start talking through what they know. They often deduce certain events or potential moves the characters will make. It's in these scenes that you appreciate that these characters are genuinely smart. Even though they're the fuck-ups, they're still experienced MI5 agents who are thirsty for proper action. With Roddy's help, the slow horses realize that the car the kidnappers are using comes equipped with sat-nav that can be used to track it. They alert the authorities, who arrive and escort Hassan to safety. A large part of the last episode of Season 1 is not material from the book. Hassan genuinely does kind of just save himself at the end of the book. Curly ends up tripping and injuring his ankle, at which point Hassan gets a hold of the axe. And Curly doesn't have a gun the way he does in the show. In the book, Hassan kind of just scoffs at the absurdity of the situation and walks away. Hassan delivers the same line in the show, but it's played as more of a don't turn to the dark side moment.
You don't want to kill him, bud. He's done.
Like,
He's finished.
fuck, I don't!
Hassan, look at me, Hassan. No. No.
You make me ashamed to be British.
A recurring theme in the books is the idea of bad actors who pretend to be competent agents or terrorists, but who ultimately, as Lamb puts it, trip over their own dicks. Whilst everyone else is attempting to help Hassan, Lamb and River are playing London rules and get to covering their asses. For some reason, River recognizes Mo's head. In the book, Lamb immediately says that he was a slow horse. And as the two are readying themselves to return Duffy's car to the park...
Is this a joke? That's the Proclaimer! Get out of the...
It dawns on River. Alan Black was an agent who was assigned to Slough House and quit shortly before River was assigned there. There's a hint of this early in the book when it's mentioned that Black was the last name of the person who recently quit. But more importantly, River saw Taverner meeting with Alan Black when he tailed her. This is something which River explains to Sid in the show and is briefly mentioned in the opening chapter of the book.
I was assigned to follow the Shadow Minister for Education as an exercise, but then he had a heart attack the night before, so I followed Taverner instead. I got within 10 feet and she never knew. Not until I showed her the photographs the next day.
And that bit about her applauding you?
People have made more of that than it warranted. It was just 3 claps.
The reason why Taverner set River up and told Webb to give River bad instructions at King's Cross is that he's a witness to Taverner meeting with Black. A meeting which ties her directly to the kidnapping. So, under the guise of returning the car before claiming there's a bomb in its boot, River infiltrates the park and confronts Spider about fucking him over.
I know what she did. She got you to fuck me over at Stansted because then she'd have an excuse to get rid of me. It was your fiasco.
River finds the file and the pictures he took of Alan Black among a file Spider named Fiasco. So in book 1, the characters are painted a bit less heroically than they are in the show. It's not so much a nail-biting hunt for Hassan till the end. It's more so what's happening and what does it have to do with us before the characters get the blackmail material they need to stay in the game. In the show, there's an extra scene where Taverner meets with Peter Judd and establishes a connection between the two. Both characters agree to have Hobden killed, and in the show, we see Nick Duffy carrying this order out to tie up loose ends. So there's more a sense of heroism and more of an action emphasis in the show rather than the book. But more than anything, this is essentially an entryway into the series to establish who these characters are. The first half of the book, Dead Lions, is subtitled Black Swans. Louisa explains that the phrase Black Swan means a totally unexpected event with a big impact, but one that seems predictable afterwards with the benefit of hindsight. For the most part, Louisa Guy is characterized pretty much identically to how she is in the books. The show doesn't make explicit reference to the mistake which landed Louisa in Slough House. The book, however, does. Louisa messed up her first tracking job, following a young man on the streets from a distance. This exercise was done with 3 agents, including Louisa, since she was still green to ops. But the target was onto them. He stepped into a clothing shop and swapped outfits before leaving in haste. Louisa simply lost the tail. Failing to track the target results in smuggled guns being put on the streets. It gets to Louisa when some of these guns turn up in crimes perpetuated later on. So Louisa's reasoning for being in Slough House seems like a distant relative of the reason why River is there. Both of them screwed up tracking ops. A bit ironic considering the two develop a relationship which feels more like siblings rather than friends or lovers in the books. In Book 1, Louisa is isolated and lonely. Most of the people she knew at Regent's Park don't keep in touch, and Louisa is feeling burnt out. Perhaps this shared lack of fulfillment is why she connects so well with Min Harper. The two have shared drinks before Book 1 starts, but haven't started a relationship properly. But around the same time that the shenanigans at Hobden's place is going down, Min and Louisa are at the pub wondering what can be done about Hassan. They go back to Slough House to get it on because, in the books, neither of them are particularly happy with their living space. However, they're interrupted when they hear Jed upstairs. The two make their way to him armed with a paperweight and a stapler. This is one of many examples in the books where the characters are comically inept going into a fight without weapons and have to improvise. Jed attempts to push his way through, but he and Min tumble down the stairs, breaking Jed's neck. Not much with Min or Louisa deviates from book to season 1 of the show, though there is some solid dialogue with them in the finale, which is not featured in the book.
You know, us kissing in the stairwell, that was good. It was great, but then us going upstairs with the paperweight and the stapler, that was amazing. I mean, that was, you know, we were good, we were a team. We had each other's back.
Bit cheesy. And now we've got no petrol and no way to catch up to the bastards, so...
We were never going to catch them, were we? Just felt good being part of something, didn't it, you know?
Like many of the characters at Slough House, Min Harper is defined by what Herron refers to as a brainless second. Other agents in Slough House have at least relatively complex reasons for ending up there, but not Min. Min simply left a disk of classified information on the tube. The book says he might have gotten away with this if the disk's pouch hadn't been bright red and stamped top secret. The woman who ends up finding the disc gives it to the BBC, solidifying the humiliation and ensuring that Min will never return to the park. Min is a particularly relatable character since he isn't necessarily defined by general incompetence, but more going through the motions. There's this recurring joke in the show where the CD player in Min's car is broken and constantly plays Coldplay's The Scientist.
Min, is there no way to turn that off?
No, the CD's jammed in and the stereo doesn't turn off.
Well, then can you at least change the song
It's stuck, it doesn't turn off. So
oh my god.
Fuck me, who cares?
There's no way to turn it off, turn it down, or change the song, and Min seemingly doesn't bother trying to get it fixed or even just breaking the radio. But that's how Min works. He rolls with the punches and will work with the deal he's been handed. Min forgot the disc on the tube because he was casually going about his day just like anyone else. We've all had those moments where we forgot something seemingly obvious. But it's how this mistake has no other explanation beyond incompetence which gets to him. The dogs write Min off as an idiot, and comedy sketches refer to the blunder of an MI5 agent which made the headlines. Nobody on the street recognizes Min as the agent who fucked up, but they were laughing at him all the same. In the books, Min is constantly checking his pockets to make sure he hasn't forgotten something important. This mistake is something his subconscious is reminding him of, affecting his muscle memory. While Min is a slow horse who fits the stereotype pretty well, he still shows confidence when it counts and gets plenty of material to work through with Louisa. Min is married and has 2 kids, but his marriage and relationship with his kids has been faltering ever since his exit from the park.
Hello, buddy. Where are you? Well, your mum's right, you do need to get that finished, don't you? So, that's okay. Yeah, well, let's speak tomorrow then. Okay, look.
Min now stays at his own small flat with his wife watching over the kids. At the start of Book 2, Min and Louisa are seconded by Spider Webb for the purpose of setting up a meeting between him and Russian oligarch Arkady Pashkin. The reason why he decides to use them in the book is because of political changes which occur at Regent's Park following Hassan's rescue. As was mentioned previously, Diana Taverner is a second desk at Regent's Park. She's the second desk who oversees field ops, which is why Diana works so closely with Nick Duffy and MI5's internal police force. Diana joined the service towards the end of the Cold War, when Charles Partner was still head of MI5. After his death, the role of first desk went to Ingrid Tierney. The book says the fact that Tierney was a woman would have been a soothing balm to Taverner, if it hadn't been a severe irritant instead. Ever since then, Taverner has been doing everything she can to undermine tyranny and pave her way to the top, hence the bold and risky moves that she made in Book 1. More than any of the other characters in this series, Taverner really comes across like some of the characters in Game of Thrones or Succession. She is out to sit the throne, and she will bury as many bodies as she needs to get there. But in Book 2, her ambitions are somewhat hamstrung. Following the events of the first book, a lot of changes occur at Regent's Park. Roger Barrowby is a character who only appears in one scene of the TV series. He's a member of the Limitations Committee who oversee funding for MI5's operations. But the chair of Limitations in Book 1, Leonard Bradley, is fired when it's discovered an apparent safe house is a fully staffed beachfront property in the Maldives. Barrowby then takes over as chair of Limitations, and he cracks down hard on auditing MI5's operations, dotting every I and crossing every T imaginable. This serves as a blow to Ingrid Tierney since Bradley served her political interests, and it also means that Taverner has to play her cards safer in Book 2. This is also why Webb decides to use Min and Louisa. While Barrowby is watching Regent's Park closely, Slough House is not focused on nearly as much, meaning he can make the risky move without Barrowby catching on. Whilst Louisa and Min handle setting up the meeting with Pashkin, Slough House has some fresh recruits who've joined the stable. Similarly to Jed, Marcus Longridge, at least almost, was one of the dogs. And like Sid, Marcus isn't in Slough House because he's an incompetent agent. In fact, Marcus steps up to action and is highly astute in dialogue. A couple of hints are dropped in the book as to the real reason why he's at Slough House, this being that he's a liability. Marcus is a gambling addict. Pretty much everything where you can risk your money for the sake of more, Marcus will partake. The park makes the mistake of sitting him down with a counselor who believes that Marcus is afflicted with an addiction. With firing him now off the table due to the counselor's assessment, Marcus is instead sent to Slough House. What the book does is relate his desire for the thrill of action and kicking down doors to the thrill of betting. The risk is enticing to Marcus since he loves taking his chances. Marcus has a family, and things have been rocky financially. In the books, Marcus doesn't tell his wife, Cassie, what Slough House is. He only tells her he's been transferred. There's this imagery in the intro to Season 2 of the show where Min's figure is replaced by the likeness of Marcus. Marcus's office mate is Shirley Dander, a short, hot-tempered agent who's constantly combative with the other characters. Shirley is in Slough House because she punched a co-worker so hard she knocked him off his feet. Ordinarily a sackable or arrestable offense, Shirley is spared because she had a card up her sleeve. She told them she was gay. And in her words, no way were they going to fire a dyke for punching out some asshole who felt her up in the canteen. Marcus asks her if she actually is gay, and she doesn't reply. It's implied that Shirley is gay/bi in the books, and it's made clear that Shirley's having issues with her significant other at the start of Book 2. In the books, Shirley has a buzz cut that she got when she came to Slough House. It's almost like a rite of passage thing like the military or prison. Lamb describes Shirley as being built like a football, able to take a good kicking. Shirley takes anger management courses in the books mandated by MI5. She calls them AFM, short for anger fucking management. But it wasn't just her temper that landed Shirley in Slough House. Shirley has issues in the books. Issues was the verdict from HR. It was clear that Shirley Dander had issues.
Jesus Christ, I think you have a fucking drug problem.
The show on occasion highlights Shirley's drug use, and people like Marcus say they can spot it affecting her work. But Book Shirley is a manic drug user, full out bumping lines of coke in the office. She spends her nights clubbing to dance out her aggression, not picking anyone up due to just how erratic she is. And she's constantly described as getting a rush out of action, which gives her a natural high. Action, drugs, whatever it takes to get that extra high, Shirley will take it. So there's new faces in the building as well as previously developed relationships. What could possibly go wrong? The opening of Book 2 follows a former agent named Dickie Bowe following a mysterious man through a train station and later a bus when the train has a mysterious electrical failure. However, Dickie's thigh gets nicked by the edge of a briefcase, or the tip of an umbrella. Later on, the bus would deliver one soul fewer than it had gathered. Following Dickie's death, the matter is investigated directly by Jackson Lamb. This serves as a bit of a shock to the other characters since Lamb is infamous for loafing in his office and not being as directly involved in these books. But Lamb seems very interested in this, and he manages to find Dickie's phone hidden on the bus before he died. His final message on his phone is the word cicadas. After returning to Slough House, Lamb gets Shirley to steal the CCTV from the bus station to get more clues about who Dickie was following. Whilst this happens, River goes to his grandfather to try to see if he can get straighter answers from him as to what's going on. David explains to River that Dickie was a field agent who worked in Berlin during the Cold War. The word cicadas refers to Russian sleeper agents that Dickie believed had infiltrated Britain. Cicadas are insects which hide for years at a time, only for them to come out of hiding and sing their song together. The alleged mastermind of this operation was Alexander Popov. However, the whole thing was determined to be a sham, a ghost story created by the Soviets to distract MI5 during the Cold War. Dickie was let go as an agent when he showed up drunk, claiming to be kidnapped and tortured by Popov, with them forcing him to drink the alcohol. David also makes reference to Alexander Popov's apparent home, a military research station dressed as a town in Georgia from the Cold War, a town designated ZT 53235. The town was later leveled by the Russians, who believed that a spy from Britain had infiltrated the town, but in reality, the evidence of the spy was planted. The destruction of the town is covered up through the guise of an accident at the plutonium plant. River keeps all this in mind and begins to wonder if Dickie may have been onto something all those years ago. After getting some of the slow horses to do his dirty work, Lamb confronts a man named Nikolai Katinsky, who is a former KGB agent who defected to the UK. Katinsky is a character who is meant to mirror Lamb as a character. He's unhealthy and has many of the bad habits that Lamb has. He also suffers from these coughing fits, something which Lamb suffers from and slowly grows worse as the books progress. Katinsky hints to Lamb that he believes Popov was actually real, and that the ghost story thing was a ruse to keep his identity secret. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled and all that. With the CCTV, the clues lead to a small town called Upshot. So Lamb uses his leverage that he earned in Book 1 to get Taverner to set up an undercover identity for one of his agents to infiltrate the village, and he decides to give that identity to none other than 003.5. Min and Louisa vet Pashkin's bodyguards Pyotr and Kirill. The two are shady, armed, and clearly up to something, so Min decides to follow them on his bike. Louisa and him go through a bit of drama at this point in the story. Louisa is frustrated by how rashly Min is acting with the mission while she attempts to be more organized. But Min is convinced that for some reason the two men are lying about where they're staying in the city. Later, Min heads back out on his bike to spy on Pyotr and Kirill. But he ends up getting caught in the act. To the reader and the viewer of the show, it seems that Min might die then and there. But Pyotr and Kirill are disarming and friendly to Min. They sit down and have some vodka with him. Perhaps they're a bit pushy with how much alcohol they give him. Whilst Lamb and Catherine argue about Lamb sending River to Upshot, they get a call from Nick Duffy, who reveals that Min is dead. A woman hit Min with her car when he swerved right in front of her on his bike. The toxicology shows that Min was drunk, and the woman stays at the scene of the accident. Pretty open and shut tragic accident, right? The first half of the book ends on Catherine's words.
Who's going to tell Louisa?
There are countless hints in the first half of the book that someone is going to die. While Book 1 didn't exactly hold back with offing characters, Min's death really sets a precedent moving forward. As much as this is the end of the road, nobody is safe at Slough House.
I think it adds something to the books, that sense of danger. You don't have to kill many people off before any character I put in danger, readers are going to worry about, because I have that reputation. And that helps me in writing the books. Yeah. So, sorry, not sorry is probably the right answer.
In the book, there's a 3-week time jump following Min's death. River spends the time in Upshot establishing his identity as a writer visiting the town. This is also the delay before Pashkin is meant to arrive in town. When the reader is in Louisa's head, she seems shockingly sanguine. She only took a single day off work after Min died. After that, she poured everything into her work and insisted that she stay on the Pashkin detail. But it's made clear that Louisa is absolutely enraged. Shirley believes that Louisa had turned into a wraith. Louisa is sure that someone killed Min, and she's not afraid to get blood on her hands to find out who. Marcus replaces Min as Louisa's partner on the job, and he's protective and cautious. His approach to the job is far more similar to Louisa, as opposed to Min, who went off more on his own. When Pashkin finally comes to town, Louisa offers to have a drink with him. Upshot is one of the few elements from book to show where the two stories essentially went in a completely different direction. In the show, River pursues a lead provided by Katinsky, then he bribes a cabbie and gets a vague idea of the owner of an airfield being involved, and then the focus is all on this one family. But in the book, River doesn't really have a lead. There are several names in Upshot which Catherine investigates with Roddy's help. And it's a really small town, so if the cicadas are there, odds are River's met one of them by now. But none of them give off sleeper cell vibes, if you will. As one might imagine, the cicadas are in fact real in the book. But it's not one family connected to an airstrip. It's 17. There are 17 sleeper agents who were all moved to Upshot shortly after the fall of the Berlin Wall. For over 20 years, Soviet agents have been living in the most cliché small British town. Lamb and Catherine later realize all of them probably don't even know that they're sleeper agents. Sleeper agents quite literally live and die by secrecy. Why would these agents talk about their secret identities with each other? So there's this fascinating twist in the book where you've spent time in Upshot with River getting to know a ton of people in the town. Then all of a sudden, a good chunk of them could be sleeper agents. But agents who serve whom? The Cold War is over, and the Soviet Union is no more. When it's time for the cicadas to come out of hiding, will they sing their song after all this time has passed? In the book, the character Molly Doran relates the title of the second book to a kid's party game. When you play Dead Lions, you pretend to be dead, lie still, and do nothing. Lamb asks her what happens when the game is over, to which she replies, "Oh, I expect all hell breaks loose." Louisa has a drink with Pashkin. The reader being in her head gets a pretty clear idea of her headspace. Torture Pashkin till he tells her who killed Min, kill him, then kill the person who actually killed Min. That's the simple version. But her so-called plan is thwarted by Marcus, who confronts her and steals her torture kit before she can use it. Everything comes together in the third act when the meeting with Pashkin happens. This meeting takes place at the Glass House, or Needle as the book refers to it. At the same time, a banking protest called Stop the City is going down. This protest is against Peter Judd in the show, a change likely done to make Judd a more recurring villain in the story. Whilst in Upshot, River investigates a military base nearby and gets a village local named Griff Yates to help him look for clues about the man Dickie was following. Griff ends up leading River into what turns out to be an artillery range as a little bit more than a prank. River is then saved by what he initially believes to be a dwarf, but he's actually a man named Tommy Malt, who sells packets of seeds in the village. He takes River to the flying club nearby before tasering River after Catherine calls him and informs him of the potential 17 sleeper agents in town. River is then tied to a cart and witnesses Tommy moving bags of fertilizer near the plane. All of a sudden, it becomes clear what the cicadas are up to. They're going to crash a plane into the Needle, creating Britain's very own equivalent of 9/11. Kelly Tropper, a woman River is romantically involved with in the book, and another man named Damien take off in the plane without Tommy. River fails to stop the plane from taking off, but he's untied from the cart by Griff. River then calls Catherine in a panic and attempts to call in a Code September.
It's Code September. We have to evacuate now.
As in September the 11th?
However, he's interrupted by two soldiers who ask River to put the phone down. River has been having the most stressful night of his entire life, so when one of the soldiers goes hands-on, things get complicated.
I'm just on a call. Drop it! Yeah, just as soon as I finish.
They interrupt River's call before he can confirm the matter and attempt to arrest River as well as Griff. There's this recurring theme in the books with River where he has a habit of going full Tom Cruise mode, sprinting straight into the danger. But where Tom Cruise and James Bond fall and get back up, River is the type of spy to realize after the fact that all of the running was unnecessary in the first place.
River Cartwright thinks he's the hero of this book. As he tends to think he's the hero of any book he ends up in, strangely. He's a young man who has been sent into this kind of exile in Slough House through no fault of his own. He didn't really mess up. He was kind of framed. It was other people's wrongdoing that put him there. So he's very eager for redemption, and as a result, he has a tendency to jump at situations without thinking it through.
River and Griff scuffle with the soldiers before River claims that he's MI5 and manages to de-escalate the situation. After the soldiers listen to reason, River realizes that the bags of fertilizer are still full after the plane has taken off. The plane doesn't have a bomb on it. It's flying illegally into the city, not to crash into the Needle, but to drop flyers on the Stop the City protest. Fuck. In spite of the incomplete order, Catherine informs Taverner of River's code September. If this is a serious national emergency, immediate preventative measures must be taken. If it's all bullshit, well... Seeing an opportunity in front of her, Diana brings the matter to Barrowby. With some prodding, he ultimately agrees to confirm the code September, and the resulting order throws the protest and the city as a whole into a frenzy. It's around this time where the meeting with Pashkin is going down, and what this is all about becomes clear. Everything from Dickie Bow's death has been engineered. Nikolai Katinsky has been Alexander Popov the entire time. The sleeper agents in Upshot were his brainchild. In the book, Katinsky is actually at Upshot when River infiltrates the town. Tommy Malt is one of the identities that Katinsky plays in the story. So he's playing 3 different identities in the book, not just 2 the way he is in the show. Pashkin is not actually a Russian oligarch. Roddy discovers this when looking into his online history. Information was put on the web to give the faint image of him being someone of note, but it's all fake. And no one at the park recognized this because of Barrowby's auditing. Pashkin is in fact a career criminal who's at the Needle for the sake of robbing one of the diamond merchants that the building houses. The premature code September was needed to throw the city into chaos and make their escape assured. This whole thing has all been one big diversion, but still, Louisa doesn't know why they killed Min. After Pashkin and his guards reveal their guns, Piotr shoots Webb in the chest. Marcus fires back with a gun he'd hidden in the room earlier. Shirley and Roddy at this point are heading to the Needle to help however they can. After being locked in the conference room, Louisa begins interrogating a wounded Kirill and puts it together. Min saw Pashkin with Piotr and Kirill when he was supposed to be in Moscow, except he wasn't. He was in a doss house on the Edgware Road, because the ambassador is a little pricey when you don't need to be there, isn't it? When you're not really a fucking oil baron, just a fucking thief. And that's why Min died. It really is that small and pathetic. Min saw Pashkin in town when he wasn't supposed to be there. If he revealed this to the other slow horses, it could have blown the lid on Pashkin's identity being fake. So they killed him for it. Marcus manages to break down the door with a fire axe and heads down to the diamond merchant that Pashkin is robbing. They're too late as Pashkin is already gone. However, Louisa notices a fingernail-sized diamond on the ground and ends up heading back to the shop after Marcus heads downstairs to follow a fleeing Pashkin. Louisa, on the other hand, realizes that the medical helicopter they called for Webb is Pashkin's real plan to escape. He didn't go downstairs. He went to the roof. Despite being unarmed, Louisa heads to the roof to confront Pashkin. The two share dialogue as Pashkin attempts to hunt Louisa down. False identity for a big-time thief, roof of a building, helicopter. Louisa literally thinks, I'm in Die Hard. Right before Pashkin nearly kills Louisa, Marcus arrives and shoots him dead. He ran into Shirley on the stairs and realized that Pashkin went to the roof rather than down the stairs. Marcus reminds Louisa that he's in Slough House because he gambles, not because he's a fuck-up. Once the panic quells and Pashkin is killed, Katinsky is confronted not by Lamb, but by River, who meets Katinsky near a church. Katinsky reveals that he is in fact Alexander Popov and the brainchild of the cicadas, as well as Tommy Malt, the apparent dwarf who saved him. He reveals to River that he is dying of liver cancer. The reason why Katinsky attempted to wake the cicadas is that he's a dead man walking who's looking for his last hurrah before he bows out. When River presses Katinsky on why all 17 of the sleeper agents were sent to the same town, it's revealed that the ZT-53235 detail of the Popov legend is true. Katinsky grew up in ZT-53235, and the smiting of its population ties into Katinsky's motive as a character. Upshot originally had a civilian population which largely serviced the military base nearby. Katinsky tells River, "I came from a place that epitomized the Soviet world in English eyes, and it was destroyed by fire. So here I am, in a place that epitomizes England to the rest of the world. Tell me, what happens next?" Suddenly, Katinsky tasers River and reveals that he needed Pashkin's connections to acquire plastic explosives. Each sleeper agent has been given the materials to create a bomb. With them being triggered remotely, the bulk of Upshot can be leveled. An insane act of terrorism which would achieve precious little for Katinsky's cause. However, the cicadas are all that Katinsky has left. But River tells Katinsky that he's wrong. He says, "They're not who you think. Not anymore. They've been here too long." Katinsky activates the bombs by phone, only for nothing to happen. River gives Katinsky a spiteful nice try, but then Katinsky reveals that there's one bomb left. A bomb which takes Katinsky and the vacant church there nearby with it. So there's this fascinating note that the reader is left on with Katinsky. Maybe Katinsky wasn't so much the zealous true believer that he claimed he was. Perhaps it was only after he was given his own death sentence that he decided to commit to activating the cicadas. But all of the sleeper agents in Upshot don't go through with their mission. Because the truth is, people move on. Life is too short to cling to decades-old wounds or feuds between parties which don't even exist anymore. In all that time that you spend clinging to what could have been, you could instead be making friends, family, or a whole new life that can redefine who you are. That's what's so powerful about all 17 of the sleeper agents not following through with their orders. All of them were perfectly happy accepting their false identities, which at one point were all a means to an end to serve the Soviet Union. So Book 2 throws the reader a curveball through the unceremonious killing of one of its main characters, and it gives readers some interesting new recruits moving forward. While the deaths of characters kick off the events of the first two books, it's missing persons which define the next two books. As was mentioned previously, the opening of Book 3 is completely different from the show. The show goes out of its way to depict Sean and Allison happy together before the park tragically extinguishes their love. The book, on the other hand, is far more Looney Tunes. A man dressed like Spider-Man is standing on the roof of a building with a banner that he's planning to set up. All of a sudden, Batman appears on the roof to join him. Mick Herron continues to refer to the characters by their superhero names rather than their actual identities. While Spider-Man goes in for a polite handshake, Batman punched him in the face. He then picks Spider-Man up and hurls him off the roof of the building. A wild, insanely out of context moment which sets the book up on a note of intrigue. It's revealed later that Batman was in fact Sean Donovan, and the man he killed, Spider-Man survives the fall in the book, was Paul Lowell, a member of the private security firm Black Arrow. He's also part of Fathers for Justice, a real-life fathers' rights organization who dress up as superheroes in overt locations. Sean goes through a farcical amount of effort to create a job opening at the firm. The openings of the book and show are very different, and that's because book and show Sean have vastly different stories. Book and Season 3 deal with the kidnapping of Catherine Standish. Catherine is confronted by Sean literally in the paragraph after the cold open because Sean and Catherine know each other in the books. In the show, he does this after going to an AA meeting with her. While the skeleton of the story is pretty much the same, the motivations for the plot are completely different. In the show, Alison Dunn was an MI5 agent working out of the British Embassy in Istanbul. Sean was the head of security for the embassy, and the two were lovers. Allison attempted to expose a scandal that MI5 attempted to cover up, which is contained in a file called Footprint. This file contains proof that an experimental device which could hack computers from a distance was used by MI5. But the hacking device had a side effect of being somewhat of a death ray. Several people were seriously injured when the device was used, and the fingerprints of Ingrid Tyranny are all over the footprint file.
What I did there really was for the good of the service.
You signed off on testing a device that would wirelessly hack encrypted computers.
It could penetrate closed systems.
You put a load of innocent people in hospital. You nearly killed a senior North Korean spy. And then you ordered the termination of one of our agents who was about to blow the whistle. You are out of control.
MI5 killed Allison and made her death look like a suicide. So in the show, Sean is a pretty morally clear character, seeking to avenge his murdered lover and reveal the truth of it all. But in the book, things are not the same. Sean is a former career soldier who is connected to Catherine because he too is an alcoholic. But this was years back when Catherine spent her days blackout drunk, so there's not much feeling there. Allison isn't Sean's lover, she's Ben's fiancée. The show makes Ben and Allison siblings rather than lovers. Allison was asking questions she shouldn't have and was killed by MI5, but it was less obvious. Rather than feigned suicide, the park went with spiked drinks. Because of this, Sean ends up taking the fall for Allison's death after crashing a car with her in the passenger seat. The episode is made to look like Sean was driving drunk. Also, in Book 3, Sean is working directly for Taverner, who plays Sean like a fiddle in the story. So the motivations for the villains are different from book to show, but both give an interesting spin on Sean. As soon as Catherine is kidnapped, it doesn't take long for the others to notice. But as they're trying to figure out where she could be, River gets a text from Catherine's phone with a picture of her gagged and a gun to her head. Catherine tells River to meet them at a pedestrian bridge nearby, which River immediately sprints to. There, he finds a mysterious man who asks him to retrieve a file from the park. In the show, the man waiting for River at the bridge is none other than Spider Webb, who insists that his sister and her family are being threatened, forcing his hand. Webb is not actually in Book 3, at least not in the traditional sense. After being shot in the last book, Webb ends up on life support. River, for reasons he doesn't fully understand, continues to visit Webb in the hospital. Rather than using the missing diamond from Season 2 the way he does in the show, River infiltrates the park by requesting to speak with Taverner. He tells her that before Webb was shot, Spider told River that if he ever were hooked up to machines to keep him alive, he'd want them to pull the plug and let him die. People sometimes think about that kind of a thing. What you might do if you were on life support, or what you might do if you found out you had a mentally debilitating disease. At the end of the book, River visits the hospital room and eerily finds it empty. He realizes that the words he told to Taverner may well have gotten his old partner killed. River carries the weight of this decision that he made alone following Book 3. In the book, the man on the bridge is the man who Spider answers to in the show, Sylvester Sly Monteith. Pretty much everything that Webb does in the show is basically done by Monteith in the book. But Freddie Fox is more overt and, well, bisexual about the whole affair. So River is between a rock and a hard place. Steal a file from the park, or potentially let Catherine get killed. Pretty tough choice. After infiltrating the park less blatantly than he does in the show, River meets with Molly Doran, the records keeper at Regent's Park. Lamb visited Molly in the previous book to learn as much as he could about Nikolai Katinsky. Molly is a seasoned veteran of the park in the same way that people like Lamb and Tierney are. In the books, Molly's legs have actually been amputated. She apparently lost them in Berlin. But that's a story for another day, and one that she likely wouldn't tell you about. Whilst most of the characters at the park are not likely to do favors for the slow horses, Molly can be in their corner when motivated. She also shares a similar sense of sarcasm and the thick-skinned nature that Lamb has. Molly and Lamb have pretty sharp dialogue in the books whenever the two come face to face. Molly amusingly talks about the file with River and reveals to the reader that it's the PM's vetting file. Someone, somewhere, has fucked River's life up a good one, and it results in River getting the shit beaten out of him by Nick Duffy. That someone who fucked River's life up again is none other than Peter Judd, who's been busy between books becoming the new Home Secretary. Judd wanted to be recruited by MI5 but was rejected due to his psychological evaluation. But now, Judd has won on the political end, and in essence controls Regent's Park. Ingrid Tyranny meets with Judd, who reveals that the people who've kidnapped Standish are a Tiger team, agents who are meant to test the functionality and infrastructure of security services. Sly Monteith was Judd's buddy from college, and the two hatched the plan together with Monteith's firm as the backbone. With a simple kidnapping ploy, Judd successfully bamboozled an MI5 agent into infiltrating the park and nearly getting the PM's file in hand. Judd now has dirt on Tyranny and decides to celebrate with Monteith over lunch. This lunch doesn't quite go as planned after Sean drops Monteith's body outside the restaurant. Sean makes it clear that while Judd ran the Tiger team before, they're working for him now. Sean claims that he and Ben want to look at the Grey Books, files containing detailed information on conspiracy theories. Some are plausible, some are humanoid lizards are currently running the world level. These files are held at a facility which is currently being overseen by Taverner. Having fired Marcus and Shirley shortly before, Lamb asks River and Louisa to escort Sean and Ben into getting the Grey Books. At the same time, he heads off with Roddy to get Catherine, having identified the house she's being kept at from property connected to Monteith. Roddy's bus antics and Catherine quitting notwithstanding, the rescue goes down without a hitch. Book 3 is where the reader sees how truly ruthless Diana is. The show paints Taverner as more of an opportunist regarding the Tiger Team plot, but in the books, this entire event was her brainchild. She suggested the Tiger Team to Peter Judd, and she decided to directly manipulate Sean Donovan due to his status as a soldier. With Barabee out of the picture after the fake Code September fiasco, Taverner is now playing for keeps, and she wants Tyranny gone. Tyranny slowly realizes that Sean and Ben are not out to get the Grey Books. She got cocky, wanting to throw a wet towel on the fire, but Tyranny puts together what really must be in that building and decides to take drastic measures. She contacts Duffy and orders a cleanup on everyone at the facility, including the slow horses. So Duffy contacts Monteith's security firm and enlists their help at covering the mess up. Black Arrow, called Chieftain in the show, are not the hardened paramilitary badasses that the show depicts them as. They're daytime rent-a-cops who Duffy sizes up as barely good enough for crowd control. Most of them don't even have guns. For the most part, they're armed with truncheons and tasers, though a few of them do have real guns. Their threat in the book doesn't come from how skillful they are, but rather how numerous they are. There are 15 from Black Arrow, 2 members of the Dogs that Duffy requested specifically for the job, and Duffy himself. His plan is to use the Black Arrow crew to essentially flush out the system, then finish the job himself. But as so often happens in these books, things do not go as planned. Marcus and Shirley arrive late to the party. As was mentioned, Marcus's arsenal isn't a thing in the book, so they have to improvise with mostly their fists, and also a bootleg Arcade Fire CD, which Shirley kills a guy with. Marcus ends up getting captured by Duffy before Shirley knocks a Klieg light onto the van and distracts them. Shirley takes Duffy's suppressed pistol that he used to kill Douglas, the lone worker at the facility, and uses it to get a few shots off on the fleeing Black Arrow members. The others in the facility exchange gunfire with the Black Arrow crew. River ends up getting tasered yet again, having been tased twice by Katinsky in the previous book. It's becoming a bit of a theme for him. Ben is killed after taking a headshot, and Sean gets a good guy wound in his shoulder and a less than good guy wound through his leg. He stays behind and asks River and Louisa to give him the gun they have. In the show, this is a tense shootout to the end, with River resorting to throwing the gun after it runs out of ammo. But in the book, most of Monteith's crew start running away after the guns start going off. Like many villains in this series, Black Arrow are just another group of bad actors pitted against the Slough House crew. It's a small wonder that the slow horses often come out triumphant in these books. Marcus and Duffy have a similar boss fight in the show the way they do in the book, but this is where a fascinating change takes place regarding Louisa, specifically a kind of debt that she owes. In Book 2, Marcus saves Louisa's life by killing Pashkin, arguably twice if you count when he prevented Louisa from torturing him, and in all likelihood getting caught or killed in the process. And in Book 4, Marcus saves her life again by driving a taxi into Patrice. However, this is also the book where he's unceremoniously killed. The man saved her life twice, and Louisa is left without a way to pay him back. Dead twice over, if not for Marcus. The deaths of people close to her, such as Min and Marcus, define many of Louisa's choices throughout the series, and the guilt of things left undone weighs on her. The show, on the other hand, kind of gives Louisa the easy way out. The season 4 taxi save is performed by Lamb rather than Marcus, subtracting one of the 2 life debts that Louisa owed Marcus. Also, in book 3, it's River who kills Duffy. Payback for the beating River took from Duffy earlier in the story. Well, limited brain function, as Diana puts it.
They don't think he's gonna make it. They don't think. They're pretty sure that he has no brain function.
In the show, Louisa is actually the one who kills Duffy and saves Marcus, after which she says,
Guess now we're even.
It's a bit difficult to depict a guilty conscience unless you're literally in the minds of the characters, a luxury the books have, but the show does not. So they opted to have Marcus and Louisa pay each other back rather than have one not save the other in turn, which works well enough in the show's context. While on the subject of changes, the show puts an insane amount of focus on the missing diamond from the heist in season 2. Duffy seems to have a personal vested interest in figuring out who took it, but in the books, it was seemingly just missed. Louisa hides the diamond inside of a wall in her flat and waits for enough time to pass to sell it. She uses the money to get a better flat, which is a bit outside of the city, but she's on mortgage rather than rent. It's a bit of a spiteful note for her character that she and Min were both unhappy with their living situations. In the end, Pashkin sort of ends up paying for her to get a better flat by selling a small piece of his bounty. Season 4 doesn't really bring up the diamond, probably just to save time. I suppose another reason the show didn't mention it could be that, like a lot of TV shows, characters almost always have spacious, enviable apartments because it's TV. But in terms of changing the source material, nothing could compete with the door slammer of an ending that the book has. Season 3 of the show ends on a pretty happy, optimistic note, all things considered. River leaks the footprint file, Tyranny is ousted from the park, Lamb and Diana get an ice cream, and then everyone just sort of jumps in the air and the end credits play over a freeze frame. But in the books, things are different. The file, which Sean and Ben stole from the facility, isn't information on a failed computer hacking death ray. It's information about the use of black site prisons which the park used to disappear people, or black bag them. This file and protocol of disappearing people is called waterproof. Lamb underlines that if the file itself were leaked, Tyranny wouldn't be the only one to go down. Lamb pretends to give Taverner the file, but there's only a newspaper inside. Lamb felt like getting some fresh blackmail material on Taverner since he kind of used up his book 1 blackmail in the previous book. So Taverner decides to bite back. She calls Peter Judd and has his sleek-haired errand boy Seb infiltrate Slough House to steal the file and kill Lamb. But Lamb is waiting for Seb, pretending to be asleep, and he shoots Seb dead. The last line of the book is a bloody nuisance getting rid of bodies. Good job, he's got slow horses to do that for him. So moving forward in this series, Taverner has now once straight up attempted to kill Lamb. Lamb brings this up casually in the 5th book. Kinda like, hey, remember that time you tried to kill me? That was fun. This action also paints Taverner in a vastly different light than she's depicted in the show. Diana is not the morally duplicitous police chief style character that the show depicts her as. Taverner will slit your throat personally if it bolsters her own interests. For the most part, book 4 is slower and a bit shorter than the other books. Then the ending happens. The book opens at the West Acres shopping center. The reader follows a security guard who all of a sudden witnesses a flash mob in the mall. The group joins in song and dance whilst dressing in colorful shirts. The somewhat outdated nature of a flash mob is noted, but the guard still cracks a smile before being blown to bits by a suicide bomber. The term flash mob becomes a cruel joke which starts the story off. Only 2 days pass after this opening before the story kicks off, and people are pissed. They want answers, and they want to find out who has done this. Lamb would usually be assigning tedious tasks for the slow horses to keep them busy, but in the books, Lamb's been largely absent from Slough House. Perhaps he's sulking somewhat after losing Catherine in the last book. Instead, the slow horses are having trouble with the 2 new recruits, the awkward aforementioned Moira, and a far more mysterious man. The latest member of the Slow Horses is Jason Kevin Coe. Coe is a closed-off, hoodie-wearing psychopath. He barely talks, but in the books, the reader is in his head, and it's a dark, noisy place to be. Coe has an iPod that he's always listening to. While the tune he's listening to can be heard faintly in the show, the book explains that it's Keith Jarrett's improvised piano recital from Osaka, November 8th, 1976. In an interview Mick Herron did, he admits that Keith Jarrett's music is music that he personally likes, and he listens to it when he's writing sometimes.
I found out quite a long time ago that I didn't like listening to anybody singing when I'm writing, because I don't want anybody else's words in my head. So I listen to a lot of jazz, and I like listening to improvised jazz because there's no lyrical connotations at all. But I started to listen to more classical as well, largely contemporary classical. Arvo Part I listen to a lot. The musician I probably listen to more than anyone else over the past few years is Keith Jarrett. I love listening to his improvised live performances. I think they're extraordinary.
The piano song goes on for minutes on end, and Coe has developed a tic where his fingers play an invisible piano, though Coe had never played the piano in his life. But he needs the music in his head to keep everything quiet, because Coe has trauma that he's keeping inside the way a man wants to keep his intestines inside. In events explained in a previous novel, Coe was tied naked to a chair whilst another naked man threatened to cut him open with an electric carving knife. This traumatic event seems like it has hollowed Coe out, leaving only an empty shell left. His mind often drifts to the idea of the electric carving knife cutting his insides out, and them splatting as they hit the floor. Before he was assigned to Slough House, Coe worked in psych eval. Ironic, considering that Coe himself is a psychopath. And unlike the rest of his co-workers, Coe seems to take the environment somewhat well. If nothing else, it's usually quieter than his head. Something the book highlights is that Coe actually shares an office with River. There's a scene earlier in the book where all of the characters at Slough House are going about their day-to-day before David and River go missing. That's where the moment where Marcus waterboards Shirley takes place in the book. Not much comes of this since River is away from Slough House for most of that novel. But moving forward, River is going to be office mates with someone who has committed cold-blooded murder. Where will the story lead these two men? There's a moment in the book where Louisa surprises Coe out of frustration and throws a stapler at his keyboard when she fails to get his attention with her words. The typical surprise most would get is exacerbated. Coe suffers a brief panic attack, drawing his knife in the act, which Louisa notices in the commotion. The show gives us a version of this, but it's less clear that this was a panic attack and the result of his PTSD from being tortured.
Louisa!
Later, when Shirley grills Coe for details about a conversation he had with Lamb, Coe puts the knife to Shirley's chin the second she puts her hands on him. Coe does not like to be touched, and if you startle him, you may catch the glimmer of a blade in his hands. A bit more becomes clear about Coe as the book goes on, but at the start, Coe has precious little to say. Whilst Marcus busies himself waterboarding Shirley to Moira's shock, River has his own issues to deal with, and he asks Louisa for advice. River believes that David's mind is deteriorating. River has seen David being unusually forgetful, and he's concerned for his grandfather since he keeps a gun in the house. But River is also worried about bringing up the matter to the park. David's mind houses years' worth of Cold War secrets. Can he be put in a regular nursing home? What happens if he randomly starts spouting state secrets out loud? Then what? Things are not looking good, especially when the reader gets inside David's mind. David believes that he's being watched as he makes his way down to the village for groceries, but he's having trouble remembering what items he wanted. In the book, David actually goes into town in his pajamas. He quite literally forgot to dress himself before going out. A lady offers to make sure he gets home safely. But then, David gets a knock on his door, apparently from River, who asks to get David upstairs to the bath. David is confused. River's voice sounds strange to him, and something just isn't right. After a gap in the story, the reader is thrown straight to Lamb responding to David's house after getting a call from the dogs. Somebody at David's house is dead.
Take away the good looks and there's really nothing there.
Sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean you.
Following Duffy taking a pipe to the head in the last book, the new head of the dogs is Emma Flyte. Emma is strikingly beautiful in the books, with flowing blonde hair and a flawless face. One character thinks she could play a host on Westworld. She almost looks too perfect. And this sense of beauty is somewhat of an annoyance to Emma. For one, she's supposed to be a spy, and being the kind of person who turns heads whilst walking down the street probably isn't ideal for the job. Emma often ties her hair into a tight bun to be less eye-catching. She also doesn't want people to get the impression that her looks contributed to her having the job that she has. Emma didn't start her career off as a spy. She started and served for years as a uniformed police officer. She's only been one of the dogs for the last 2 years. So unlike Duffy, who is perfectly willing to fall in line, Emma is a far more active and astute character. And this serves as a thorn in the side of Diana Taverner. Taverner worked closely with Duffy, and she relied on him because he acted like a soldier. This is the same reason why she used Sean in Book 3. Soldiers tend to follow orders and don't ask too many questions. Cops, on the other hand, are all about asking the questions, and Emma herself is a cop through and through. She's a bit similar to Ed Exley from LA Confidential. In a world filled with corrupt and compromising characters, Emma is the one who always plays things by the book. Lamb sizes Emma up as such instantly when he meets her at David's house. Emma escorts Lamb upstairs where a body with its face shot off is on the floor. Emma asks to identify if it's River and asks for possible identifying marks. In the books, River has a distinct mole on his upper lip, which could be used to ID him. But as Lamb notes, that's a bit of a moot point for the time being. Regardless, Lamb takes a good long look and determines that it just has to be River. So he sends a text to Roddy casually saying that he identified Cartwright's body, then heads off to reunite with an old ally. Over at the park, agents are working overtime to figure out who's behind the West Acres flash mob. In Book 4, Taverner is cheated out of First Desk by Tyranny, who exploits every option she has on her exit from the park to prevent Diana from taking over. Instead, the bookish, somewhat stiff Claude Whelan is made First Desk, primarily because of his spotless record. Whelan is not prepared or confident to take over as First Desk. He only recently became First Desk and a major terrorist attack has just occurred. Shit's stressful. Taverner uses this to her advantage, not by making his job difficult, but by befriending him. She takes every opportunity she has to give him advice and make it clear that if he ever needs help, he can simply go to her. The reader is introduced to Claude when he's shown rehearsing his Cobra briefing to Diana, with her offering constructive feedback. From the start, you get the sense that Diana already has Claude exactly where she wants him. Season 4 of the show unfortunately went a bit overboard with Whelan's awkwardness and indecisiveness.
Then he was in Paris.
Signal disconnected.
It doesn't matter.
I know it does matter. I'd like to get these things... Hold on for 2 seconds, because there's a cable, and we can actually...
Why are you like this?
I actually don't know how that links.
Whelan isn't an idiot in the books. He's just super by the book and uncomfortable with compromise. He doesn't have the same expertise at boardroom politics that Diana has. Also, in the books, Claude has an interesting relationship with his wife, Claire. Claude and Claire haven't been doing great in, well, bed. They sleep separately now, and Claire is growing more spiritual as a person. As Lamb deduces from Moira, Claude is a philanderer. He secretly sleeps with other women and has trouble not objectifying some of the young women at the park when the reader is in his head. At the same time, Claude isn't proud of what he's done. He thinks about Claire all the time in the books, and her picture in his office is something that he's constantly looking at and adjusting. It's like his wife is Claude's moral center. Though Claude is not a good husband, his marriage to Claire pushes him to be a better man. Maybe all he wants is to be as good a person as Claire is in Claude's eyes. Unfortunately for Claude, Diana learns a disturbing bit of information and decides to use it for the purpose of blackmailing Whelan. The man who bombed West Acres is identified by passport as Robert Winters. This identity is not some random fake name. It's the name of what's called a cold body. This is an intricately designed identity built over the course of years, which an agent can assume and hold. If you need a new driver's license, you can just get it renewed because it's not really a fake identity. Cold bodies were mothballed after the end of the Cold War. They were a bit too complex to maintain. The only issue is cold bodies were supposed to be used by people who work for the park. How the hell did the identity of Robert Winters get used by the West Acres bomber? Was the bomber one of their own? Diana gets Claude to not read the fine print before signing a few nondescript papers. One proves prior knowledge of the cold body identity before Whelan quote-unquote withheld the knowledge at the Cobra meeting. So Whelan will keep quiet for the time being. As for the agent who discovered the cold body, Diana orders Emma to take her into custody. There's a meeting in the book between Taverner and Emma, which unfortunately didn't make it into the show. Let's just say Emma will take orders, but she makes it clear that she is very much not on Diana's side, which is of course a problem. Diana doesn't pick sides. If you're not on her side, you're her enemy. Roddy obviously does not break the news of River's death well to the others, and he openly tries to loot River's computer for parts. Louisa is stunned, thinking it's Min's death all over again. This is where the aforementioned stapler shenanigans with Co happens. Everyone is stunned and confused, while on the other side of town, a door is being knocked on. Lamb visits Catherine at her flat. For a while, Lamb feigns empathy and care. Catherine, on the other hand, bites back about Lamb intentionally gumming up her exit from Slough House. After Lamb excruciatingly draws out a request for tea, it becomes clear that he suspects Catherine is up to something. Specifically, that River dropped David off for safekeeping. At this point, Herron lets the reader off the hook and cuts back to River, who is on his way to France. The man who knocked on David's door was not River. In the show, we actually see River talk David down in the bathroom. Jack Loudon and Jonathan Pryce absolutely nail the horror and confusion of the moment.
Please, it's River, it's me!
Why are you here? I just shot you.
No, you haven't.
How do I know you're not an imposter?
Ask me something only I would know.
I met my KGB counterpart in Berlin, Christmas Day, 1982. We'd had too much to drink. What did I do with him?
You had a snowball fight.
Oh, gosh. Oh.
All right, okay.
River sees the man who David shot, and he does bear a striking resemblance to River, despite the gore making it a bit unclear. Wishing to buy them time, River puts the second round of the double-barrel shotgun in the man's face. He plays his cards smarter than show River by jacking a car a relatively short distance from the house before hopping on a night bus. The show, however, did make a pretty hilarious joke of River being more carefree with their escape.
You're no good at this. And besides, his car's outside.
The only clues to the man's identity are a passport under the name Adam Lockhead, as well as a receipt from a café in France. So it's off to Joe country for River as he heads into the unknown in search of not much else known. Lamb heads back to Slough House, revealing the truth of his deceptive message. As so often happens in these books, the others start talking through what they know to see if they can deduce what's going on. Since all they really have is David Cartwright and France's clues, there's not much to go on. However, they learn that David took infrequent trips to France in the 90s. The man who accompanied David was none other than the former head of the dogs, Bad Sam Chapman. Sam got ousted from the park when he messed up an op which resulted in a huge financial loss to the park. Since then, he works for a private detective agency where he specializes in searching for missing kids. Ever since Sam started working there, the rate for finding missing kids has tripled. Lamb goes to him in Book 2 for the sake of getting a proper background check on the woman who hit Min with her car. Sam figures out she has Russian connections, illustrating that she was indirectly involved rather than an innocent bystander, something which Duffy overlooked. Maybe Sam has something to him which Duffy just didn't as the head of the dogs. There's also an extra scene with Sam in Season 3, so the show made him a bit more of a recurring character in the story. With Sam as their key lead and David Cartwright apparently being targeted for assassination, Lamb sends Louisa and Marcus out to bring him in. In Book 4, Sam is looking for a 12-year-old girl named Chelsea Barker. The book says it was like looking for a goldfish in a piranha tank. Sam knows he has to move quickly if he's going to get her back home to safety. Sam also recognizes a mysterious man who's tailing him. Whilst all this is occurring, River is on the hunt for a lead and is coming up short. In the show, River gets mixed up with some ruffians in the village and has to escape on a bike. He also has this mini-boss fight at a burning building with a mysterious man. But in the book, River sees far less action in France. After arriving at the Café, River learns of a large house in town called Les Arbres, whom the man River looks like apparently came from. In the book, the house is already burned down when River gets there, so there's not much to go off in the way of clues. However, through the help of a local hunter, as well as a former prostitute who lives in town named Natasha, River discovers more. Les Arbres was a mysterious house run by a few men of different cultures. One was Russian, one German, one French, but an American man was the one in charge. There were boys who lived at the house the way you might imagine with a cult or commune, but there were no girls there. The whole thing doesn't make much sense. But whatever Les Arbres was designed for, David was involved. In the book, the reader is not introduced to the American who ran Les Arbres till the ending. The show cast Hugo Weaving, you may as well give him more screen time as a character. In the book, we're instead introduced to Patrice, one of the boys who was raised at Les Arbres. Patrice is an elegant, inhumanly precise assassin who briefly mourns the death of Bertrand, the man whom David killed. Bertrand was from Les Arbres, same as Patrice. When the reader is in Patrice's mind, it's as though certain practices from Secret Service training are branded into his brain. In the opening chapter of the first book, River corrects himself in his mind about viewing people as targets. Target, River reminded himself. Not boy. Target. You have to be kind of cold and precise in this world of tradecraft. But Patrice thinks only in terms of targets and missions. Lamb compares him to the Terminator, though Patrice is less Austrian bodybuilder and more of a swift-on-his-feet ballet dancer. And the target that Patrice is given is none other than Bad Sam Chapman. The foot chase with Sam in the book is the beginning of the second half of Book 4, subtitled Nothing Like the Rain. An oppressive rain colors the latter part of the book. This chase is a tense pursuit, with Sam recognizing that Patrice is after him. At the same time, Patrice recognizes that Sam is being followed by two other people. All parties in this chase are professionals in tradecraft, and they use elusive and clever methods to blend into the crowd and distract their pursuers. But eventually, Sam gets himself cornered in an empty garage. Sam and Louisa scuffle with Patrice, who injures Sam's knee. He also throws a crowbar like a skipping stone, which catches Louisa in the ankles. Before he can finish the job, however, Marcus barges into the garage with a commandeered taxi and crashes into Patrice. However, Patrice is somehow already gone. Everyone regroups at Slough House, and it's an interesting reunion with Catherine there despite attempting to quit, David Cartwright of all people, and Bad Sam Chapman. As everyone talks through what they know, Lamb begins getting more blunt with David. Sam, as well as Natasha, the woman who River spoke to in France, who happens to be Patrice's mother, revealed that the name of the American who ran Les Arbres was Frank Harkness. Frank was former CIA, but he was let go due to unreliability. Frank believed that the best way to make agents was to train them as such from birth. Other countries had dabbled in this idea of conditioning agents to think like the enemy. Confused and weak, David begins spewing details of Les Arbres to a distraught Moira after the word cuckoo is used, the same name for an operation involving Les Arbres. This wasn't something that David was indirectly involved with. He was complacent in it. The cold body passports that show up throughout the book were something he provided to Frank. Then all of a sudden it becomes clear. West Acres. When the reader is in Patrice's mind, we learn about just some of the things that Frank did to the boys at Les Arbres. On each of the boys' 12th birthdays, Frank locked them in the cellar at Les Arbres. They were given no natural light save for one candle. Every day, Frank would give them a single bread roll and a beaker of water. He told them they would be released as soon as they asked for their freedom. Bertrand lasted 17 days. Patrice had lasted a full month. But another boy, Yves, had lasted for 2 months. Yves always pushed himself to go further than any of Frank's other puppets. But Patrice believes he had grown too used to the darkness. Frank pushed this boy and just kept pushing to the point that he snapped. Yves is the one who is independently behind the West Acres bombing. Some kind of act of rebellion against his surrogate father. That's why Frank burned Les Arbres to the ground shortly after the West Acres bombing and sent Bertrand to kill David. He was cleaning house. And Frank isn't done yet. River returns to London via train. Emma Flyte and her close ally Devon Wells confront River and take him into custody. However, Patrice manages to intercept the car and takes River at gunpoint after Patrice calls Emma's bluff and steals her gun. This episode is caught on bystanders' phones and uploaded to YouTube, humiliating Emma, who's also soaking wet due to the pouring rain. Starved of a lead, Emma goes to a pub with Louisa, who arrived looking for River, and starts downing tequila shots. She spitefully replies to a call from Taverner, who calls Emma a disappointment. Even without losing River, that YouTube video will probably land Emma in Slough House. Later on, Emma manages to facilitate Frank's arrest, restoring some goodwill from Taverner. Patrice takes River to Frank Harkness for a face-to-face meeting. This meeting is a Heat-style encounter in the show, where River has already put together most of the puzzle and stares him down like a badass. But in the book, Frank just casually drops it on River. "It's good to see you, son. Have you been?" Frank is River Cartwright's father. He's also Bertrand's father, which is how Bertrand was able to impersonate River. He was River's stepbrother. When Lamb prods David at Slough House for what Frank had on David that kept him quiet, David replies, "Isabel." Frank seduced David's estranged daughter, and he used River's very existence as leverage against David. But Isabel and Frank parted ways, and Isabel took River away from Frank. Isabel is a troubled woman in the books. River's unconventional name was her idea, the apparent side effect of a hippie phase. But whatever life Isabel wanted to live, River was never an important part of it. That's why David Cartwright and his wife Rose were the ones who filled parental figure roles to River. When River repeats the word father, Frank asks if River wants him to say it in a Darth Vader voice. Hugo Weaving leans into his Agent Smithisms with his performance in the show. He definitely tries to give Frank a greater sense of menace than he has in the books. Because in the books, Frank is incredibly laid back and casual whenever he talks to people. You have to remember, this is a man who held together something resembling a commune for years, and he wooed women into making assassin babies with him. But the thing is, Frank is Darth Vader as much as he jokes about it. Frank doesn't want to kill River, he wants River to come work for him. Frank says that he's been doing less than by the book ops, but it's still in the interest of protecting national security. Much as Westacres is on him, that wasn't something that Frank planned for, nor had anything to do with directly. But River, obviously, is not having it. An underlying theme in the books, which becomes strengthened after book 4, is that Frank may be River's father, but David was the man who was there for River when he needed a father. When it all comes down to it, River is really David's son. After River ultimately insists on taking Frank in, Frank throws River, well, into the river. Louisa arrives with Emma and manages to save River from the water. After an entire book being separated and worried about River's safety, Louisa is finally there for him when he needs her. Unfortunately, this and Frank's arrest are not where the story ends. Before speaking to River, Frank pulls Patrice aside. He gives Patrice the address of Slough House and directly orders him to kill everyone in the building. Sam and David are the real targets, everyone else is a liability. So out of nowhere, in the last building in the world you'd expect excitement, the villain suddenly knocks down Slough House's door, bent on killing everyone within. The slow horses are obviously unequipped for the fight and scramble for anything resembling a weapon. Bad Sam drops the tea kettle from the kitchen down the stairs in an effort to land a headshot on Patrice, but he only hits the shoulder. Coe keeps Shirley in River's office and has his knife at the ready. Catherine retrieves Lamb's gun, unsure if it's even loaded, before heading back downstairs to River's office. Moira and David are hiding in Catherine's office upstairs. Sam manages to briefly slow Patrice down with a chair, but Patrice ultimately corners Sam. Here's how bad Sam Chapman's death is described. When Patrice kicked the door, it almost came apart. The wood was so rotten. He stepped over its broken parts, shot Sam Chapman in the head, then checked the room. Sam's last thoughts are of Chelsea Barker. He hoped someone else would go looking. Catherine, Coe, and Shirley hold up in River's office. Catherine ends up surrendering the gun to Shirley and arms herself with a keyboard from River's computer. Keyboard in hand, she thinks, I could really do with a drink right now. Patrice then splinters the door open. He aimed at the young woman and pulled the trigger, and in his mind was already turning to fire at the man, was already aware that the other woman had thrown a keyboard at him, and that he would turn and shoot her too before it reached him. And all of this was inevitable. Up to the moment that the whiskey bottle flung by Jackson Lamb from the stairwell smashed into his temple, throwing his aim off. Lamb stomps Patrice's face and handcuffs him to the radiator. Shirley immediately rushes out to assess the damage. Roddy hid by climbing out of a window and hanging from the windowsill from the outside. Marcus was different. The show gives Marcus a pretty standard Hollywood-style ending of going down fighting to save his girl. But in the book, Marcus has a different, far darker fate. Marcus is sitting at his desk weighing the consequences of selling an illegally acquired Glock pistol. He thinks about all the harm that it could do being put on the street. But Marcus is desperate for a gambling fix, and his bank account is a mess. Marcus thinks of Cassie and his kids and how disappointed they would be in him. At last he thinks to himself, I have a gambling problem. And this is the last time that the reader is in Marcus's head. Shirley finds Marcus at his desk after Patrice's attack. There was a hole in his forehead. It was Patrice's bullet, but Marcus may as well have pulled the trigger himself given the headspace he was in. There are several times in the books where Marcus sarcastically thinks about scenarios where he gets shot. At one point he thinks, shoot me now. Mick Herron fills these books with sarcastic dialogue and hilarious banter. These are entertaining books to read, but Herron often throws readers for a loop by giving certain characters dark endings. In a Waterstones interview, Mick Herron says, you wouldn't want to be a character in one of my novels.
They're all my favourites, really, and that doesn't stop me being quite brutal to them occasionally. You wouldn't want to be a character in one of my novels.
Book 4 ends with Coe executing Patrice. Shirley holds Patrice's gun and considers doing the deed herself, but Catherine manages to talk her down. Coe shooting him right after this comes across as somewhat of an indifferent murder. It's as though Patrice needed killing, so Coe decides to do the job for Shirley.
I will kill anyone, anywhere. Children, animals, old people, doesn't matter. I just love killing.
Pretty much everyone at Slough House has blood on their hands in some way. But Coe is one of the few to have committed cold-blooded murder. The eerie part which the book highlights is that this action seems to calm Coe. The note the reader is left on is that Coe's hands are trembling very little. The music in his head is not quite silent, but his fingers, at least, are resting. So Coe is a quiet, PTSD-suffering, knife-wielding, invisible piano-playing psychopath who is creeping about Slough House, seemingly just waiting for someone to trigger another panic attack. But, as the book puts it, J.K. Coe might work out. Lamb meets with Claude Whelan at Slough House rather than Taverner the way he does in the show. Lamb confronts him on his Galahad identity and him being an adulterer. He uses this to give Marcus's family 10 years of financial compensation rather than the standard 5. He also learns that the park has turned Frank loose. Frank claims that he has performed dry-run tear-style attacks. He's aware of exploitable loopholes and flaws in key institutions around the world. Frank is one of those characters who always manages to skate because they've made themselves too important. It only takes 10 minutes before the park loses their tail on Frank. So for now, he's in the wind doing who knows what for who knows who. Catherine and Lamb then have one of their classic 2 glasses of whiskey on the table conversations, where she alludes to potentially returning to Slough House. When the book ends describing the chill taking over Slough House, everyone goes home in pain. Louisa thinks about the debt that she owed to Marcus. River is guilt-ridden over leaving his grandfather in a care home. And Shirley lost a man who was her partner in crime. Even Roddy, usually passive and indifferent to the people at Slough House, goes home in melancholy, with the hints of tears in his eyes. Bullet holes are nothing new to Slough House, but these wounds are closer to home and are likely to scar its occupants. So this is the end of the line. This is the decrepit building on Aldersgate Street in the borough of Finsbury with the black door which never opens or closes. The place where all the bad spies are sent. The screw-ups. The losers. The slow horses. This is Slough House. If you're a fan of Slow Horses on Apple TV, you should read Mick Herron's Slough House novels. They're short, digestible books filled with all the sarcasm and dry humor that the show has. And Herron's poetic yet concise descriptions are an element that just can't be conveyed in a TV show format. It's a story and world which means a great deal to me, and it's one that I'd love for more people to learn about. I plan to cover Season 5 episode by episode as the show comes out, with this video serving as an introduction to the books for people more familiar with the show. The 5th book, London Rules, is my favorite book in the series, and while it's already clear that many creative liberties will be taken with the adaptation, I'm still hopeful they can deliver a solid season. Let me know if you're interested in seeing more detailed breakdowns of the books, characters, or themes in the series. There are several books as well as adaptations that I would love to explore with this format. Thank you for watching, and I wish you well.